So today I'm going to make a video on a script I completed a couple weeks ago. I believe it to be the first automated Windows partitioning script. This script directly replaces the Linux script I was showing in my other videos, basically booting from an Ubuntu flash drive and then running a script to create the 5 Xbox One partitions correctly. So what the script allows you to do is correctly partition an Xbox One hard drive from within Windows itself. So Windows 10 and Windows 7 have both been tested. It should also work in Windows 8. But today I'm going to show you Windows 10 in action. You could potentially manually partition the Xbox One hard drive in Windows, but it's not easy. And the main reason being there is no built-in Windows tool to assign GUIDs to partitions, which is critical in this process because the Xbox One hard drive expects to see 5 partitions in a particular order with the exact matching GUIDs, which is not something DiskPart can't do it, and you can't manually assign them using any other tool. There is another Windows tool which creates an Xbox One hard drive or partitions an Xbox One hard drive. It's called JRunner. The problem with that, though, is it's been broken since its release, and I don't necessarily think it's going to get patched in the future. But it basically creates an extra 6th partition. It's a reserve partition, and that partition shows up in front of the 5 partitions you actually need, and as a result of that, it assigns the GUIDs incorrectly. So it assigns the temp content GUID to that reserve partition, and then it assigns the user content GUID to temp content, and then down the line, so the last partition doesn't even get the right GUID. As such, it immediately creates a drive that will give you an E200 error. So I've done some other videos on using Linux script, so you can actually use this in place of that, and you can kind of fill in the blanks as to where you need to do this. If you're basically this is the cases where you need this. If you have a bad Xbox One hard drive that won't boot, or you want to upgrade a 500 or 1 terabyte to a 2 terabyte drive, or a 500 gigabyte drive to a 1 terabyte drive, then this script is for you. And it kind of skips a few other steps. The main issue you're still going to have to deal with, though, is connecting a hard drive to your Windows system. In this case, I have it connected using an eSATA cable. So I have an eSATA cable to a SATA connection. And then I have power coming from a desktop over here. But you can buy kits which allow you to basically do USB to SATA. And that's probably what most people are going to want to do. The other thing is if you have a desktop with extra SATA ports internally, you could actually just attach this drive or the drive that you're going to format in your desktop and just reboot the system, basically, or shut down the system and add the drive and reboot the system and then run the script. I also wanted to mention that here I have actually a 500, a 1 terabyte, and a 2 terabyte. These are kind of the standard Xbox One sizes, and with the Xbox One S coming out, these are actually going to be the exact offerings. You can use drives that are in between this. So you don't want to use a drive larger than 2 terabytes, and you don't want to use a drive smaller than 500 gigabytes. But you might want to use an SSD to kind of get faster booting times. Or you might have a drive that's somewhere in between, maybe you have a 1.5 terabyte. All those things will be fine. The only issue is that with using a drive that isn't a part of the standard sizes, you just have to be careful of actually rebuilding the drives. There's an option in Xbox One to reinitialize, I forget what it's called, but basically partition the drives and rebuild them completely from scratch. And when you do that, if you had a native 500 gigabyte system or a native 1 terabyte system or a native 2 terabyte system, it's going to try to, if you have a 2 terabyte drive, for instance, shrink it down to 500 gigabytes. But most of the time you would never need to worry about that, and then you could always use this tool to recreate the drive again. So anyways, let's get to the actual process. So basically in my download, so I've created a couple versions of the script that each replaces the other, so you only need to worry about the 3-zip here. I'm going to put the link to these scripts in the actual description of the video. So here I'm going to just download the latest version of the script, which again I'm going to link in the video. And let's see, here we go. Okay, so we get the download file, so we're going to download it. So I'm going to show everything, just downloading it, and then extracting it to the desktop, and then actually running the script. So here what I have attached is a 2 terabyte drive. And I did that so, well, you'll see. Okay, so I'm going to go to my downloads here and look for my Xbox One master. So you can see here the timestamp on that is, I'm doing this on July 30th. I'm going to right click it, and I spoke before my videos. I like 7-zip a lot. It's an open source zip tool, and it has a graphical interface and everything. It's really nice. So, and it adds this menu item here. So I'm going to extract files. Actually, I'm going to open the archive, and I'm going to pick where I'm going to extract the files. So I'm going to select the directory, say extract, and I'm going to manually put it onto the desktop so that all the rest of my instructions, if you also do the same thing here, you can use the exact same paths. Okay, there we go. Now, again, I'm using Windows 10 here. So with Windows 10, with its with the extra system protection it has, you can't do certain things to drives, and you can't. It sort of protects your file system from some sort of malware and stuff doing things that you don't want to do. So in order to actually run my script on Windows 10 in this default behavior, you would need to open a command prompt that is an administrative command prompt. So you would right click instead of left click the start menu and select command prompt admin, and you want to say, yeah, sure, I want to do that, because that allows you to make changes to your system which you wouldn't normally be able to do. And I want to do one other thing too. I want you to be able to see kind of, so the other thing is, now you right click and do a run. It's disk, disk.mgmt.msc. And the cool thing about this is you kind of do an overview of all the drives in your system, so you can kind of see some things in action. It's complaining about that 2 terabyte drive. I've never actually used it, so I'm using an unpartitioned 2 terabyte drive here. So it's like brand new out of the box, and there it is there. So we can kind of see the layout changes as we use each version of the script. You'll see that in a moment. One other thing I want to do is I'm going to speak to what's actually in that zip file. So I unzipped it, so to my desktop, and here I have, it creates a directory called Xbox One HDD-master. In the root of that, there are the Linux scripts that I kind of show in my other videos. They're still there, they still function the same. I added a README which sort of explains kind of the process a little bit, which will help a little bit. It actually walks you through each step and kind of the end result. But what I've added new to my script, which wasn't in my earlier video, is the Win directory. So I have a tool here. Everything here is open source, so it's in the download. They're all GPL2. The reason we need to use a calculator tool, it's a command line calculator tool. The reason we need to use this is that the command line that I'm using to actually create the properly formatted partition, the numbers are just too large. It does a lot of calculations in bytes, and there's literally millions of bytes that are being calculated here, and it's too big for the command line to actually handle, so we use a special tool for that. And the gdisk tool, and this tool is pretty sweet. This is essentially a tool that Linux has had for a while, and someone was able to compile it, or maybe it was always designed to be compiled under Windows, but it allows you to assign the GUIDs, it allows you to do all the formatting, all the deleting, basically all the partition handling is done with this tool. There's a 32 and a 64-bit, depending on your Windows version, if you're using 64-bit Windows or using 32-bit Windows. The script kind of already checks to see what version of Windows you're using, so you don't really have to worry about that part of things. So anyways, let's get to it. So we're going to open the README here. Kind of discusses about what the script does and some things to be aware of. I'm actually going to show you everything that's in this document. So if you didn't want to watch my video and you just downloaded the tool and you wanted to get right to the actual partitioning, you could basically just read this README and follow along with what it's saying, and you wouldn't need this video. This video is more for just kind of give you some confidence going in what to expect. And also it gives you some commentary over some of the options here. I also do that in this script or in this README file. But for the sake of completeness, I wanted to make a video about it. Oh, and one of the things I wanted to do, because I always forget this part, is let me just click here. Is the CD2, let's see. Oh, there it is. I'm going to borrow one of my commands from here. We're going to go to the Windows directory where we downloaded those files to the desktop, and I created kind of a cheat command that this will work as long as you did that. You unzipped the zip file to the desktop. This command should work for you in getting in the proper location to then run our script here. Okay, so the next step is to actually just run the script. So unlike the Linux script where you basically give it a bunch of options at runtime so that it does all the right things, this script will actually ask you what you want to do. I think it's actually a lot more user-friendly because you can kind of make the decisions when you need to make the decisions and not have to make them all beforehand. Okay, so the first thing it says is, run this script basically at your own risk. Pressing the key to continue. I will say this about my script. So here I only have 2 drives attached. I actually have the Windows disk, which is this disk 0. And the way I designed the script is if you hit 0, it'll basically cancel. So you don't have to worry about your C drive. You don't actually have to worry about destroying your Windows disk with my script, because I've sort of built in kind of fail safes to not allow that. You can also see I wanted to kind of show if you're not sure what you're going to do, or if what the right selection is, you can kind of look back and kind of do some research on the side, and it's going to just default to the proper thing. So here, hit 0, and it canceled out of the script, so you can see Xbox One drive selection canceled. So in this case, I only have 2 drives. I have the Windows drive 0, and I have the eSATA, or in your case, it could be a USB attached 2 terabyte drive. Now I use a 2 terabyte drive purposely for my example, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Again, so this time I'm actually going to select my 2 terabyte drive, and it's going to try to see if there's anything on your drive and kind of show it back to you if there is anything. In this case, there is nothing there. So again, it warns you that this is going to erase everything on the disk, and that's okay. I'm going to say continue. Now, this is kind of what I think to be the best part of this script, which is it gives you some options as to what you want to do. Again, I used a 2 terabyte drive because every single option here is valid as a result. And I kind of quickly go over each one. So A is auto size. So as long as you have a drive between 500 gigabytes and 2 terabytes, it'll just do the right thing. So it'll create 4 out of the 5 partitions are standard. They're always the same size in every case. The second partition, the user content partition, is the only partition that begets larger depending on the drive size. So the auto size will always do the right thing. So for instance, if you have a 500 gigabyte drive attached, or you have a 1 terabyte drive attached, or you have a 2 terabyte drive attached, auto size will automatically do the right thing. You don't even have to worry about it. But if you know you have a 2 terabyte drive and you want to just do the right thing, or you just know it's already attached, you could select F in this case. So the only case here that might be a little bit confusing to some people is the standard versus large for each option. And in my README, I sort of cover this a bit. In fact, yeah, here it is right here. So I add this little description on each option that you can select. And all large means is that normally when Xbox One creates a drive, it doesn't use all the space on the drive. So it sort of rounds to the nearest gigabyte the user content partition, which is what this is actually referring to. So if you select large, you'll actually get an extra 779 megabytes for a 500 gigabyte drive, or an extra 524 megabytes for a 1 terabyte drive. or an extra 16 megabytes for a 2 terabyte drive. For the most part, options C, E, and G don't make a lot of sense to select, because you're essentially taking a 500 gigabyte drive or a 1 terabyte drive or a 2 terabyte drive that is a standard size that the Xbox One expects, and just adding a little space to it. So it could create problems down the line. Personally, I haven't had too much an issue with it. I basically use, I think, all the space I possibly can, especially if you're using something like Gparted and you're manually extending the user content size. That's in one of my videos. If you're doing a clone from another drive, and then you're just basically moving some partitions over, and then you're just extending the user content partition. Essentially, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a large drive. But if I'm using a blank drive, or I'm just starting a drive from scratch, the standard may be the best option for you to select. But there's also another purpose for it, and that is, let's say you have a 500 gigabyte system, and you only have a 1 terabyte drive available to you, or maybe you have a 750 gigabyte drive available to you. Either way, you have a drive that's bigger than 500 gigabytes, but you don't want to do anything kind of non-standard for that system. So you just want to replace a 500 gigabyte drive, and you don't want any other nonsense of creating a larger drive or something else. That's where option B comes in. So you basically have a 500 gigabyte system, you have a drive that's larger than 500 gigabytes, but you just want to create a drive of equal size. So, and that's what I'm going to do here. So we have a 2 terabyte drive system, and I'm going to hit B as our option here. Now, once we've actually selected that, so you see there's a couple things going on here. G disk, I have a 64-bit system, so you can see it's using G disk 64, but again, depending on the size that you have, depending on the 32-bit versus 64-bit, it'll just use the appropriate tool. But G disk basically deletes all the partitions and creates them all in a matter of a second, less than a second. It takes Windows a little bit of time to catch up with that. So you can see the next step there. It's showing you that it's created all those partitions properly, and you can see volume 0, volume 1. So most of the time with Windows 10, you have 2 partitions on your primary drive, and then from volumes 2 down to 6, this is actually disk part that's showing you this. You can see that. Oh, there you go. So you can see the list. So volume 2 is temp content. Volume 3 is user content. There's a bunch of things going on there. So it's kind of showing you everything it did and kind of spitting it back out at you. And there you go. It's done. The last part. So with the Linux script, I just want to mention. So with the Linux script, there's 2 scripts. There's one that you run to actually create the partitions, or to create the drive. And there's a second script where you can double check that the create script actually did everything correctly. I've kind of combined them here into one script. So I just have the bat. There's no list partition. There's no list part info script. And that's because the Windows script kind of combines the two. So once it's done formatting the partition, it comes back and spits out exactly what you would have expected the list part info script to show. So this is basically what you want to see when you're done running the script. You want to see that all these GUIDs are these exact values, and don't worry too much about the drive letters. This script automatically creates the drive letters as U, V, W, X, and Y, and that's to try to ensure that there's no conflict with drive letters. Those drive letters don't mean a lot to you, but they do mean something to you if you're going to do the next step, which is to use a downloaded OSUDT 2 or an OSUDT 3. You should always try to use 2 first. But you're going to basically download that script and then basically create an A, a B partition. And I'll link that in the description of this video of how to actually do that. And you can do it within Windows. And you just basically put the OSUDT files into the system update, so the X. That's why actually it looks for X to see if X is there, but you're going to dump those files directly into X. And so that's a case where you either bought an Xbox One hard drive, an Xbox One system that was missing a hard drive, or an Xbox One system that had a bad hard drive, and maybe it was one you bought off eBay or it was given to you, whatever the case may be, or it's your own personal system and for some reason it doesn't boot anymore. You know, and a lot of the times it is because of bad hard drive. Sometimes it's because of bad update. This gets around that too, so this would work for that too. So you're seeing either an E200 error, or you're seeing some sort of E100 error. So there you go. So I selected in this first case a 500 gigabyte drive. So I wanted to partition it as if it was a 500 gigabyte drive. Now the reason I did that was so we go back to our, let's close this here. So the disk management, so diskmgmt.msc program. I did that so this is actually pretty nice. So we can actually look at an overview of the drive we created. So a little while ago when I showed you disk 1, it was completely blank. It was all black, not partitioned at all. So now we have a bunch of partitions. Now because I selected 500 gigabytes on a 2 terabyte drive or a 2000 gigabyte drive, it created it as if it was a 500 gigabyte drive and left all this space left over. So we're wasting, 1 terabyte of the drive, which is not something I would recommend doing in this case. But I don't know, let's say if you just really wanted a 500 gigabyte drive, in this case, the script can handle that. So you can see the user content is 365 gigabytes, which is what a normal 500 gigabyte drive would give you. Okay, and then the other partitions are all the correct size. So we could then go back and run our script again. Let's say we accidentally hit 500 gigabytes. And we said, oh, we wanted a 2 terabyte drive. We can go back and do that again. So we're just I'm hitting the up arrow again in command to get back to the prior command so we don't have to type it every time. We're going to hit enter again. I'm going to press any key to continue. And we're going to select our drive 1. And this time it actually has something to show us because we've already formatted the drive, and it's saying, oh, this is what the drive looks like. And it actually comes out as already an Xbox One, a properly formatted Xbox One drive. So we're going to say continue. Yes, we know it's going to destroy stuff. And this time we could actually pick one. We could pick auto size in this case, or we could pick F. They actually would do the same thing. I'm going to pick F, and we're going to create a standard 2 terabyte drive. And at the time of making this video, the Xbox One S hasn't been released, but my expectancy is that the 2 terabyte system, which I think comes out at the end of August, is going to actually equal what my script creates in terms of the drive sizes. I won't actually know until I get a chance to see a 2 terabyte system. Take the drive out and then check the sizes. But anyways, we're going to use F here. We're going to create a standard 2 terabyte drive. And again, the G disk finishes everything it needs to finish very quickly. You'll see there's a bunch of little windows up here popping up with Windows catching up. So let's just explain this. So it says giving USB or SATA devices time to settle. And what that means is Gdisk will delete and recreate the partitions, again, within seconds, under a second. It takes Windows a little bit of time to catch up with that and kind of re-examine the drive and figure out what to do. So I let it sit for about 30 seconds before it does the next steps, which uses disk part to format. Each of the partitions is formatted as NTFS. So I give it a little bit of time to catch up. If I didn't let that kind of sit there for a little bit, disk part wouldn't properly see the new partitions because Windows didn't have enough time to kind of examine the drive. Windows is very slow. Like if you ever disconnect a mouse, right, from a USB port and plug it into another USB port, it always takes a little bit of time to kind of start working again. It's because whenever you're dealing with USB drives or USB peripherals, such as a keyboard or a mouse, Windows is very slow at kind of figuring out, oh, where'd you put the new device? Did you move from here to there? What is the device? All that kind of thing. It's very slow. Anyways, so there we go. So again, that's it. It kind of goes through. I know this video is going to be kind of long to describe something that's actually a pretty quick process. You can see the whole process took probably less than a minute to actually format the drive. But what I wanted to show you here is this time we selected 2 terabytes, and we're going to come back to here, and we're going to stretch this out a little bit. effect here. Let's I want you to be able to see. Let's just full screen it here. Okay, so this time, after creating a properly formatted 2 terabyte drive, again, we have all 5 partitions here, but you can see the user content partition difference here. So now it's created, instead of 365 gigabytes, you now have 1,764 gigabytes. And this is what I was saying about the leftover space. There's 16 megabytes, left over that you didn't use. That wouldn't really amount to much of anything, honestly. But I'm going to run the script one more time, and you can see that what the larger thing means. But again, so here's our system update. So our system update partition is X. So if we go into Explorer, one thing I wanted to mention too, and this is actually mentioned in the text file. Windows, when I'm saying that it's giving when it's giving Windows, or it's giving the USB or SATA drives time to settle, this is when Windows says, oh, you have a new partition that's not formatted. Do you want to format it? Just hit close on all those. It's going to create a bunch of them, and you can safely kind of just X them all out. You basically don't want Windows to do anything. You want the script to do all the work. So you can basically X all those out, or you could hit cancel. But either way, you don't want to reformat it while it's formatting, or you basically don't want Windows to do anything in this case. Okay. Now we're going to run the script one more time. And again, you don't need to do this, but I'm sort of exemplifying too how the script is pretty resilient. If you could put any drive formatted in any way, attach it to your system, and this script can handle it. It'll just basically destroy everything, but it'll put it back to the way you want it to be, or it'll format it properly, regardless of how it's formatted before the script is run. So, okay, so we're gonna run the script one last time, and press any key to continue. I'm going to do disk 1 again. Erase all the stuff, that's fine. And this time I'm going to select G, which is going to create a 2 terabyte large, which basically means it's going to use every bit it can on that disk. So we'll create G, enter. And again, Windows is going to start to, so just to show that. So here, this is actually happening while it's waiting. So it's popping up while it's sitting here, and we don't want to format. We can click cancel here. We can hit X. It's the same thing, but either way, you want to do that each time. I think on Windows 7, those boxes are a little bit more aggressive. They actually show up over the command prompt, so you actually do have to hit X or cancel right away. Windows 10 sort of does it in the background, which is nice. And now it's actually doing the format. More or less, though, you basically just want the script to run through before you worry about anything. Just let it do all the work for you. And when I say finish, it's when it gets back to the command prompt waiting for you to type something again. When you see this little thing going, it means you're done. Okay, so let's go back to disk management, and you'll see the difference here. Now there's no black anything here, so there's basically no unallocated space. Everything's all blue. Okay, and you can see that the user content is slightly larger than it was before. Before it was 1,763 gigabytes, 0.00. Now it's added that extra 16 megabytes to the user content. And you're good to go. Okay. So one last thing I want to mention, and it's in the README. And you can just double click the README and open it with Notepad. It's formatted properly for Windows, unlike the GPL license document. But one thing at the very bottom of the script it mentions is, I mentioned a little bit about, there being a log file getting created. So right here, if we copy this command at the end of this README into the command prompt, so we click up here. We're doing all left clicks here. And we're going to say edit paste. We can enter on that, and this is the log file that gets generated every time my script runs. It creates a new log each time you run the script, so what you're seeing here is the log file of the last run I did. So you can see it's saying that, you know, there's 16 megabytes left over when I started it. But this is pretty cool. So all the command output, so gdisk or disk part, it's all here. So everything that gets done by the commands, I leave it out of the command prompt so you don't see as much scrolling, but I stick it in this file. So again, if you ever have any problems with this script or with the formatting of the partition, we can kind of see what happens. I've run this script on Windows 7, Windows 10, and a number of systems and tested a bunch of times. So I've gone through this process quite a bit. So I'm really confident that you shouldn't have any issues. The log file will help some people if you're getting errors, and if you are savvy or computer savvy in any way, that could definitely help you out, you know, and be to your benefit to figure out. But also, you know, for the community too, I'd like to see, the whole idea of creating this was to give back to the community. So I'd like to give people the proper tools or the ability to do this stuff for themselves. Anyways, so there you go. So I hope this helps people out, and hey, now you can do everything within Windows. You don't have to use Linux or have to worry about you know, creating some other tools. This skips that whole step of actually creating an Ubuntu flash drive, then copying the Linux tools to that flash drive, then booting up system, and then figuring out where you need to run the scripts from. This kind of greatly simplifies it. You can do it all from the same system you're downloading the files and the same system you're attaching the drive to. You can format the drive, and then you can copy all the files that you need. One thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if I covered this earlier in the video, is that if you were going from a 500 gigabyte drive and you wanted to go a 2 terabyte drive, you could actually attach both drives to the system, create a newly formatted 2 terabyte drive, and then copy one-to-one each partition. So you could copy from temp content from the old drive to the new drive, and then user content from the old drive to the new drive, and system support from the old drive to the new drive, and so on, and make a one-to-one copy. In my earlier videos, I showed you how to do that with a product called Clonezilla. And you could still use Clonezilla to do that. In some ways, that may be easier for some people because it does all the copying work for you. But then you still have to, if you're increasing the drive size, you still have to do the gparted. You still have to do the Ubuntu bit. And that doesn't get around that. But this allows you, again, the ability to do it all from within Windows itself. All right, I think I've done enough rambling on this video, and this video is much longer than I wanted to do or create. But there you go. I ended at that. So good luck to you.